Good morning, South Africa. My name is Tabiso Mishak Mahlabeng. I'm the Digital Marketing Executive here at Top Media. As a youth, one of the toughest crises that we face is that, when you finish school, you ask yourself, will I be able to get a job? Do I have the relevant skills? And can I go out there and make a mark in the industry? And it's one of the toughest things or challenges that we face in South Africa. Stats show that over 64% of South African youth are unemployed. So we can literally say 7 out of 10 of our youth are unemployed today. They do not know where they're going to get the skills. They do not know where to go after they graduate. They do not know what they're going to do with their qualifications. They do not know what they're going to do after matric. And I'm glad that today Top Media has partnered with Cigna Academy and Cigna Group and the Power of One to talk to you about how we can make learnerships work for you. And we'll be making, as you know, Cigna understand that, learnerships, they provide a highest value of importance. As we start, like one of the key learnings or the top 5 key learnings that you should expect today is how do you select the right learnership program with a good end result in mind. And then secondly, we're going to identify suitable project for the learnership buddy system for your business. And then thirdly, we're going to be talking how, training one of the key learnings is how training outcomes are aligned to the job task. And then how we're going to create a symbiotic partnership that can maximize benefits and results. And also, lastly, we're also going to talk about how, as a sponsor, you can get a return on investment on your contribution to this economic activation. And with us today, we have Tuelo Mohashwa. She's the General Manager of Cigna Academy. We have Yvette Michael. She's the Senior Client License Manager at Cigna Academy. And we also have Tulani Sabangana. She's the Executive Director for Learning and HR at Cigna Group. Just to give a little bit of a background about them and also to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So Tuelo, as I mentioned, she's the General Manager of Cigna Academy. She's a proactive leader who is responsible for managing all of Cigna campuses nationwide. She has over 10 years of experience in senior management in both public sector and in skills development. She has a strong knowledge in public sector legislation and regulatory environment, and she has been rated as a top contributor before. She has obtained qualifications in law, operations, management, and strategy. She received her Bachelor of Law in B-Juris from Northwest University. She is also an alumni of RAU, Vet Business School, and UNISA, and the International Society of Neurosemantics. Tuelo, if you can give a little bit of an introduction and some fun fact about yourself before I introduce Tulani and Yvette.
Hi, everyone, and hi, South Africa. My name is Tuelo Mohashwa, as Tabiso has already introduced me. So, my fun fact, I'm an outdoor person. I love gardening. I love beautiful gardens. I do have a beautiful garden myself. So I spent most of my weekends in the backyard doing the garden route.
Sweet, unfortunately for me, I do not have a garden at my apartment at this time, so I'm gonna have like some pot flowers in my house. That's all the gardening that I have, and I'm really struggling to keep the flowers alive. So if you've got some good tips, I'd appreciate those. And secondly, we have Yvette Michael. Like I mentioned, she's the Senior Client License Manager at Cigna Academy. So as you know, Yvette has over 12 years of experience in learning and development environment. And she spent like most of the remainder of her career in retail sector, managing her own business. She has a variety of significant skills and strong business acumen, as well as extensive experience in business management, sales, operations, and delivering on strategic initiatives. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Human Sciences and diplomas in software support and business computing. Yvette has got some interesting fact that she wants to share about herself, a fun fact. I will give her the floor to introduce herself to our audience today. Yvette, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tabise. Good morning, South Africa. Yeah, fun facts about me. I've actually got 2 fun facts. Actually, a bit of a tomboy. So fun facts, I love fishing, but it has to be either trout fishing or deep sea fishing. And then the other thing is, before I had kids, I actually had an off-road motorbike. So I used to do off-road motorbiking.
Oh,
Those are
that's
my
fun. That's fun. Oh, I like that. I like fishing. I like fishing. I haven't done it in years though, so I don't know if that's a fun fact from my side. I haven't done it in years, and I've only caught one fish in my lifetime, so I can't be like.
One fish. Well done. Oh God.
And lastly, we have Thulani Hlabangana. She's the group director for HR and learning at the Cigna Group. As you know, Thulani, she has over 27 years of international work experience in education, in human resources, and transformation. She offers Cigna Group, invaluable directorship in the form of organizational strategic plans and facilitating the implementation of operational structure and improve HR policies and practices. This makes it like uniquely also, valuable for this conversation that we're about to have today. And one of the key things that I like about Thulani is that, she believes that everyone is innately employable. And that's something that gets me excited as a youth. And she believes that the right education can be used as a catalyst for personal and professional growth. Her deepest satisfaction comes from seeing individuals realize their full potentials and talents through essential skills and development. Thulani, are you also a fisher, or you have a different fun fact about yourself?
I have different fun facts. I like adrenaline, so I like anything that's aerobic. So yeah, I dance a lot. So that's a fun fact about me. I like dancing. I do also enjoy outdoors in hiking. So I suppose that's just one or two of my fun facts.
Oh, sweet. Thank you very much, Thulani. To our lovely audience that have joined us online from across, I want to say the globe, across South Africa, please tell us where you're from, where you're joining us live from, and some of the key things that you expect to learn today. And you're more than welcome to ask questions as we continue with this conversation. For those who have joined us on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, if you want to be able to ask questions, please make sure you do register, and you can join us live right now, and you can ask our panel of experts some wonderful questions today. But before we start and go even further, like I mentioned, like South Africa, we have a high unemployment rate, especially for the youth. And I believe it's really important that the business sector joins hands with us. And as you know, President Ramaphosa mentioned recently, government doesn't create jobs, but businesses do. So the government is there to create a platform for businesses to be able to run those businesses. But before I even go further, as we unpack this conversation today, the biggest question that our audience will have today is, who is Cigna? And what is the Cigna Academy? That's the first question that they will have in mind. And then we can maybe give a little bit of an introduction about the Cigna Academy, and then we can dive in.
Okay, do you want me to take that?
Yes, yeah. Thulani, that would be great. Can start?
Taliso, you mentioned the statistics. Cigna is all about the power of one, really making an impact. And we believe that happens one person at a time. The magnitude of the need you've really pinpointed. 7 out of 10 unemployment. That is a travesty in our view. So we want to be part of the solution as Cigna. And all of our entities at Cigna have something in transformation in mind in the services that we provide. So we provide solutions that are hooked on transformation. So what the Cigna Academy is all about is looking at the fact that you teach a man how to fish. So training is important, learning and development is important. And therefore, in looking at the national crisis with unemployment, we think that the youth problem is what we would like to be part of solving. So we do learnerships, primarily learnerships. We also got short courses. We do primarily learnerships. And our target group is the youth. And the youth and looking at the worstly disadvantaged individuals, being people with living with disabilities. We also specialize in learnerships that are catered also for the learners with disabilities. So that is what we do. We pride ourselves in being a transformation partner with all our clients. And our approach really is around making sure we marry the needs of the organization and the actual end in mind that we're really, really wanting to discuss today, being that we solve that unemployment problem and get youth into jobs.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shulani, for that wonderful explanation. And to start it off, like we're talking about learnerships, and the first question that we have to like straightly dive into is like, what are the principles of a good graduate program? Like if we could start with, dissecting those first, and then we go deeper.
Yeah, thanks, Thabiso. I'll take that as well. A good graduate program is something that we've been discussing internally quite a lot. And when we look at the work that we do in learnership, and you said something very interesting in the opening. You said, youth coming out of matric, what to do becomes their question. Now, if they can't go into a university because they did go through matric, but they just didn't get acceptance in a university, what then? So our learnerships really are their path into a job. And the way learnerships are structured enables them to get into a workplace so that they can get work experience while they acquire a qualification. So back to why are we stressing the principles of a graduate program? Because the question that we've been using over is, why are learnerships implemented traditionally differently from the principles of a graduate program? Many corporates world over implement out of their own initiative graduate programs. And it's not something that is legislated. They do it because they see value in bringing in youth into their organization as part of their organizational goals. So they have their organizational objectives that talk to a talent pipeline creation and an investment in people in a talent pipeline. Those organizational objectives are what makes graduate programs principally successful compared to how the learnerships are run predominantly. So we thought, why not adopt the principles of a graduate program where you've got an organizational impact that you want, succession planning, like I said, building your own timber in terms of a pipeline, nurturing those individuals that are fresh from school or tertiary institution, and making sure that they are aware of what the organization is about. So first part is that it must be hooked on an organizational objective. So that the only difference actually with the graduate program, which normally is taking in graduates out of a tertiary institution and then exposing them to your environment and nurturing their learning of the environment post-tertiary education. Whereas the learnership achieves acquiring a qualification and the experience, which normally what a graduate program is about, at the same time. But the principles of how you handle that program in a strategic sense, in terms of its intentions to build pipeline, to be a feeder into your organizational teams, should be the same. We think that bodes well for a good learnership. And then what happens with a learnership that works would be targeted selection. So targeted selection in that when you choose the program, it's conscious. So you're choosing a program, a qualification that makes sense in terms of a particular functional area in your business, a department, a team where there is a challenge with talent pipeline that you are wanting to address. So it's intentional selection of an appropriate learnership qualificational program that says it makes sense that this person has this academic learning for them to function in this department. And then what happens as a graduate program, the third one principle is that there's planned or structured exposure to the work environment. So that structured rotation, making sure you understand, the learner understands the business completely in terms of its value chain, so that they are aware, they have enough awareness when they're doing their job of how everything fits in and why their role is important. So that contextual learning normally doesn't happen with learnerships, but it happens with graduate programs. And the question that we've been asking is, why not? If the intent to build a talent pipeline is part of your organizational objectives. So that's kind of the third principle. And then the other thing that makes graduate programs work, and we're suggesting it should be the same for learnerships, is that it normally gets top executive attention. It gets at the top level attention because they see the fact that they want a pipeline, they want a talent pipeline, and then the top executive, one or other top executive, become the executive sponsor, who takes an interest on what impact and benefits are coming out of the investment. So it's seen as a proper investment, which then gets discussed and obviously evaluated in terms of, is it working or not working? So that executive becomes important because it becomes the sponsor who says this is important. And therefore, when you have that, then it means that the implementation is taken seriously in terms of what it's wanting to achieve. And then the other part, so we're really talking about the stakeholders and the roles here. The other principle is really that the departmental manager, where the learner gets hosted, the department where he gets to, that manager must see value in that this feeder or this pipeline into his team is actually appropriate and is getting enough attention so that the skills transfer is happening. And when they have that interest and they show that interest, then the actual skills transfer actually follows. So that departmental manager is interested in understanding how a planned approach towards real work experience is happening for the learner. Because a learner is simply a trainee, similar to a graduate coming out of university, learning the practical side of what the theory they learned. And then obviously the technical expert is key. So if the executive sponsor is there and the manager is seeing this as a must issue, that's an issue that must be done, that the skills transfer must go on, then the experienced specialist, the one who's the taskmaster, who is responsible for the skills transfer, then takes his role seriously. But what then that happens is that he then is conscientious about developing this individual who is working alongside him, and he becomes, the skills transferer. And this is basically the technical expert. And we think when those roles are very clear and everybody has ownership of their role, then and it comes from an executive saying that it's important to support the learners. And I think, just to wind it up, I think I might just say that targeted selection again. So we said it should be programmed that's relevant to the department, but then you target the right profile of learner. So the recruitment part becomes important. And I think we'll discuss that in this webinar again. Because the learner has to be appropriate for the environment, his interest and things like that. So the right selection of the right individual is important. So I think that is basically why we say, principles of a good graduate program should apply to a learnership.
Oh, sweet. Thank you, Chulani. Like you mentioned, an organization needs to, have an objective that they're trying to fulfill. You don't just bring in a learner just for the sake of, ticking the box of a learnership. You need to have a structure and a goal that you're trying to fulfill. And I know that Duelo and Yvette, they usually touch on this, they work on this so much, is sometimes they refer to the learnerships as a buddy system. I don't know if, Duelo can touch on that, like explain what that is, And then we bring in Yvette to also speak a little bit about like how can the hybrid system or work for the employed and unemployed, you know, in supporting the system, like, you know, to approach supporting this goal.
Yeah, so thanks, Thabiso. A buddy system is typically an onboarding and a knowledge sharing method, you know, which is used to orientate new employees. And it involves really signing them on a new, it involves signing them to a new workplace buddy. So who is this buddy really in the workplace? The buddy is an existing employee who guides then this new employee or the learner or the graduate through the first weeks or months on the job, really.
Thank you, Tuelo. Yes, I said essentially the goal of the buddy system is just about the knowledge transfer. So companies often spend a lot of time and effort and money on their skills development of their employees throughout the year. Employees also gain a great deal of skills over time as they work in an organization, just by doing their day-to-day work and by engagement with their co-workers. Often employees are sort of report or to more senior or experienced, excuse me, more experienced person in the organization. And together they have a different skill set. So this enables them then to share and to teach. So the same would be with the learner. If the learner is coupled with an employee, this employee can become that, that learning coach or that buddy coach to support the learner through the journey. So great examples of this knowledge and skills share transfer are aspects like goal setting or effective communication, even just how they hold themselves professionally, confidence, timekeeping, etc.
Thank you, Tuelo and Yvette. And like, if we were to go further, like you said there needs to be a hybrid model. So I think I want to come back to you, Yvette, and then explain like how companies can actually adopt this, you know, buddy and coaching approach together, like for that hybrid system.
Yes, thanks, Thabiso. Well, as at Cigna, it's about understanding our clients and essentially the business that they're in. So it's about knowing where the learner would start and where the learner would end. So we ask companies to share with us how it is that they operate, what the industry requirements are, where perhaps their skill shortages are, and what resources they need to support their operations. So this conversation is very valuable because with a customer, then this leads to the perfect learnership program design, something that's fit for purpose. And then also it's very much about the recruitment, as Tulani mentioned earlier. It's recruiting the learner that's going to fit this program properly. And also it's about a clear development plan that this learner would have. And then with those things tied together, they're ready to make a difference, both the learner and the organization.
Oh, it's Yvette. Yes, I'm online. Another question that I kind of had, like just to as we continue, employers they're looking at from an employer perspective. You know, an employer has to make a return on investment. They need to make some commercial returns, and then students from their side or learners who are unemployed, they're also looking to gain skills and to grow. And I wanted to ask Tuelo, and then maybe Tuelo and Tulani, if you can both answer this. Is there a win-win situation in running like learnerships? Like, can there be a common goal between a learner and the role players in the learnerships?
Oh, certainly. Yes. Certainly. So with learnerships and employers and host companies clubbing in together, there is a triple whammy win actually. So when employers actually decide that they want to sponsor a learner on a learnership, they've got also an ultimate goal in mind, which is to get their 100% bonus points. And how do they get those 100% bonus points is through making sure that the learner at the end of the program is absorbed and absorbed successfully. And by that, I mean a learner getting permanent employment, and which in the ultimate end addresses what you alluded to at the beginning, which is a social ill, and which we can even now call it a pandemic. We are sitting with a ticking time bomb. So we need to get learners on permanent employment. How do we then make sure that that learner ultimately learns in a job and permanently? Tulani alluded to that, and Yvette to some extent. So at the core of recruitment mandate is to make sure that we get the right learner on the right program, and then place that learner at the right host company. So we really need to make sure that it's a win-win situation for all three parties. The employer gets their points at the end of the day. If they are hosting the learner, they get the benefit of the learner. The learner gets employment. We solve South Africa's problem, the host company as well, because they are sitting also with a problem where they, much as they would like to absorb the learners, but they cannot absorb the learners because it's about headcount, it's about budgets. We know what the state of the economy is at the moment. So basically, it's then the sponsor assisting the host company. So now, so I don't know, Turan, if you want to jump in.
I think I will just, you mentioned a few good points there. I just think that taking it to a personal level with all the role players also is a consideration. Because the practical side of the investment in time in a learnership will not really go down well if there's not a personal what's in it for me for all the role players. So yes, a business as a role player, yes, in terms of the executives will have a view. But when you look at the buddy system we've been talking about, there's people that are contributing to a learnership program success, and they need to say, what's in it for me? When they ask that question, that must be addressed in, as Yvette said, in how you design the program and how you bring the parties together, the orientation, the co-creation of the structure of the learnership program and who does what, so that there's, there is commitment from everyone and they see benefit from, so the win-win you are asking. So for me, as I said before, the person who's going to transfer the skill is the most critical, but he will not take, or she won't take that role seriously if the departmental manager is not seeing value. So that it needs to talk to value for everyone. And so yes, Tuelo did mention that it's hooked on an organizational goal. We've covered that. But what I think is that the departmental manager must see that, I have a problem of attrition. I have a problem of, high staff turnover. And if I start to build that buddy system, so that by the time the learnership program is ready, I've had 12, it's over. I've had 12 months to assess this person, and I have made sure that one of the skilled and experienced people are looking after this person properly, as Yvette said, in all aspects, the soft skills stuff, the etiquette stuff, but actually in the practical part of the job. Now, when we get to that practical deliverables and what's expected in terms of the function or the department's deliverables, that person who's the taskmaster transferring skill, he or she must see value in having a buddy to say, if I transfer skill to this person, it will also work for me. And normally, as we know, times are hard and resources, everybody is really, really working on the most optimal resources. They don't have excess anyway. So when there's an extra person, a learner joining the team, it must be seen as I am developing a team member to help me with my tasks, to help me with what I'm doing, and it will ease my burden. The more time I invest in equipping this person, I can start to share tasks, and therefore I can start to apply my mind to higher level skills or things that I'm not even getting to because I just didn't have the capacity. So that is very important when you look at a win-win, that everybody must see benefit. And of course, for the learner to have such a committed skills coach gives them that confidence that I'm in good hands, and they don't start wandering around whether it's worth it, and the absenteeism creeps in, and the disinterest creeps in, and they also feel part of the team. And if they become a buddy, we choose that word as a buddy, that we must have a buddy system. It's because then they feel a connection and that they're in good hands, and there's a team member who's looking after their interests too. The learner at the end of the day wants to be equipped to be able to get a job at the end of the program or while the program. And we've seen many success stories where employers or host departments talk about, well, do I have to wait until the end of the 12th month? If the matching and the structuring and making sure the roles and the intents behind the program, the what's in it for me is actually, if we have had that conversation in the beginning, then they actually, if the learner is working out because the selection of this learner has been appropriate, the skills coach, that buddy is actually very invested in the success of this learner, then they're saying, well, we don't want to lose this person. We don't want their CV out. They actually say, how can we now make a formal offer? And remember, what we want to do is to get the youth into jobs. So we encourage that. And I think, that is the win-win for me, when everybody gets to feel like they're in a caring relationship that is mutually beneficial. And then they have the same goals, which is to get the task done at the end of the day. And therefore getting the task done means the new team member must be equipped to contribute accordingly.
Oh, thank you, Thulani and Duelo. And thank you to everyone asking the questions. If you could please ask them in the Q&A. Mina will get your question, and also Anonymous. But I wanted to come to Yvette, and then also to Zebediah. Omar also asked the question, and I think you can maybe slightly touch on it. And I wanted to ask, having heard from what Duelo and Thulani have said, like we need to create more of a buddy system, is how can companies create an ideal, environment for a young first-time worker? And then please take into note, like Zebediah wants to know, like, how can we also implement that when we think about like remote working, having to take into consideration of remote working because of the current situation with the pandemic, and some people are working remote and so forth.
Thanks, Tabitha. So yes, in terms of how companies would prepare an ideal workplace environment for a first-time worker or for a learner or for that whole buddy system, it would be really ideally to create an environment where through the coach or the skills buddy, they have the actual ability to ask questions that help them grasp difficult concepts. Also acquiring new skills, but those practical skills that then tie in with the theory components that they've learned. Also allow for practical learning of practical life skills, assist them in adapting to change, and having them actually learn the courage to take on change is also very important. So through the buddy system, then the buddy would also allow them to bring their own ideas to the workplace. And this in the end is only going to offer success to the company. And then the end result would be a happy and a confident and a skilled learner. And this way, both the company helps to contribute to transformation as well as employment.
Short, sweet, and simple. Hope everybody got that. And then, Duelo, I wanna come back to you shortly, and because we're talking about like why we need principles of a good graduate system. We're talking, is there a win-win situation? How do we create, an ideal environment? So the biggest question someone might ask will be like to use like, what is the end result to keep in mind when you create this system? Like if you can like tap on that, and then while you're tapping on that, like explain to us like what is the end result in mind. Also, if Thulani can also come back in and maybe share a little bit with us on how can a learnership help the business and make the time investment attractive. So Duelo, the floor is yours, and then Thulani.
Yeah, so Thulani, Tabiso, thank you. The ultimate end result in mind, I've already said, it's absorption, right? But now there is one important role player here that we have always perhaps not really focused on, and that is the host company or host, Yes. So they are, remember, we need to understand what the market demands out there. And the market really, if you ask that question, who the market is, the market is really the host. And Thulani has touched a little bit on that we need to understand this host company. So in the past, we would just place learners in companies and just knock on the door and say, we've got a learner is looking for workplace experience, without really understanding what the requirement of this host is. So we need to understand, Thulani has alluded to some of these things, what is their really pipeline or talent pipeline. We need to be the host talent solution partner in the whole journey. We need to understand what is their staff movement patterns. We need to really understand what are their sort of job profiles, so that when we prepare the learner to go into the workplace, we prepare the learner that is going to go into a fertile environment where they are actually needed, and they are not going to be wandering around because actually, he's just here to make copies for us. So now the other thing that we need to look at is our work readiness program. It must be just in time, taking into consideration the host requirement. So we're not gonna put learners on one size fits all work readiness program, but we will have in mind what the host company requires at what point. So we need to then also have flexible programs where we don't just run learnerships and we say for the 50% of the time the learner is in the workplace and we're then gonna show them into the workplace at a later stage. So we would have engaged and really understood the needs of the host company and say, and if in the ultimate end, the end mind is for you to absorb this learner, what type of learner do you want to see at the end of the program? And that then we then prepare that learner if in terms of our work readiness program to make sure that learner is properly matched.
Yeah, I agree with lots of the things that Tuelo has said, and I think we cannot emphasize the matching process. So matching means that there's an environmental requirement. The host is wanting a particular skill sets or to develop someone to be appropriately skilled for a particular role. So I think you asked the question, what can a learnership help? How can a learnership help a business and make the time invested in the learnership attractive? It's a very, very good question, Tabiso. And I think, and this is where the most passion around the graduate program principle. Because if we approach the time investment, the monetary investment, with the fact that our intent is to equip this person with the end in mind, which is what Tuelo has talked about, is the absorption. Now, we all know in 2018, the legislation around BBBEE has kind of clarified what absorption, the right absorption is, which is, again, in line with the objectives of getting youth into jobs, getting people into jobs, is that it needs to be a permanent job. So when you say you've absorbed someone into your organization, it means you've given them a permanent status on your team. And so that is very important. That is the end in mind. And so how is the question, is it worthwhile giving this time? If you already spent the money, it should be worthwhile to spend time developing and capacitating this individual so that they can bring value to the team. So that, to me, is the answer to the question. If you opened your door to someone and exposed them to your environment, make it meaningful, make it count. It should be for the fact that they need to be so skilled and ready sooner than later to actually deliver value and then be a useful member of the team. And as Tuelo said, if you were just thinking this is just someone who just asked to make coffee or photocopies, then the actual intent is not very ROI intended. So ROI you've got someone in your space, there's resources thrown at this person, and yet we are not fully committed in the time. So the time factor is, if you're going to sooner than later build skill in this person so that they know the ropes and they know what is expected and they are prepared to deliver, it should benefit the organization so that their time investment is worthwhile. So it should be working like that. Like we said, we love the principles of a graduate program, but that is how the time investment becomes attractive.
Oh, sweet. Thank you for that. And speaking of that, like time and then of investment, like what is the true investment value to a client company when learnerships are done in line with those principles, especially if they come and say, I want to work with the Cigna Academy?
Okay, so you're asking me if there's ROI or
Yes.
the sponsor?
What is the true return on investment? Yes.
I really think that's an important conversation to have, because sometimes there's huge budgets, and we've just talked about the time part, right? That's a huge investment in its own. But there's also monetary budget investment. And I think Tuelo touched on and brought in transformation, BBBEE, the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, and the codes actually put a target spend that all companies are trying to maximize, to try, they invest in learnerships and try and get the maximum points for their scorecard. So in the skills development scorecard. Now, you know, it's 3.5% of the livable amount. You know, so the money, if you're spending the money, right, as I said before, if top management is interested, like they would be with the graduate program, in a learnership success, then ROI will come in, because it ticks, as Tuelo said, it's a triple whammy. It ticks so many boxes, but it shouldn't be about box ticking when you look at capacitating someone to deliver on your behalf or in the organization. The points will follow. But the issue is there is an investment, which is real money that the business puts out for this. So hence the interest in it working so that the return on investment comes through. But what is that? As I said, the BE legislation, the codes, 3.5% of your livable amount is going towards learnership, and you want to maximize and make sure that when you spend the money, you get the points follow. But they should follow with substance, with a transformative outcome. And that is getting someone into a job because it's answering your business objective, which is creating a talent pipeline, all the stuff we've discussed before. And then, you know, it's interesting in South Africa, this is such a serious thing that there's many complementary pieces of legislation. There's the Skills Development Act and the Skills Development Levies Act. They're working in tandem to get this mission and this focus right. The Skills Development Act, we now work with the CETAs. You have to put in a WSP and ATR and all of that stuff. And you want to make sure that you comply. And when you work with Cigna and we do it in the way that we've been suggesting, then that will follow too. So that's a return in investment. You know you're going to comply with those things, because when you've got it in your skills development plan or your pivotal plan, whatever it is, you will, if you work with Cigna, you will get all the results and all the evidence that you require in order to be compliant. And then also the rebates in the levy side will come through. So that's just really in terms of the business side of things. But on the impact side of it, you've got that person equipped to actually start performing, really performing for you in the organization. And who doesn't want that, to have performing employees? So the investment in time discussion we just had. So that should be the ROI, proper delivery by a team member who is equipped to deliver. So that the major investment in funds and the major investment in time should be strategic in that way. And that is how then you get that win-win. So the employer gets a functioning person in their teams, and the learner is happy because he's absorbed, he's got a permanent position. The departmental manager is happy because, you know what, he's got that pipeline. And then the skills coach, the one who's transferring the skills, and if he has been successful, he should feel the support. You know, he has a minion, he has somebody who's helping with his deliverables. So I think that is, for me, a definition of ROI if all of that is accomplished.
Oh, thank you, Thulani. I just wanted to note that there are lots of questions that are starting to come through. I will ask them afterwards. And in a few, because we almost done with like most of the questions that I actually had for you. But I wanted, you know, like you mentioned, like success and how it can be transferred, how we can get like a return on investment, like, you know, knowledge transferred from a skilled employee to a learner in training is one of the most, you know, important success factors in a successful learner exiting ultimately to reach, you know, the end goal of employment. As you mentioned, like we count success as that. But I don't know if Tuelo, like if you wanted to elaborate more, like what is the definition of success when it comes to Cigna Academy, when it comes to learnership, or when it comes to your programs?
So thanks, Tabiso. So for us, the definition of success is a learner at the end of the day, you know, exiting successfully on our programs and getting that permanent employment. And also the definition of success is for us, if we can find that matching perfect host for our learner, that's the definition of success for us. And the other one, which is key, because we need to keep our client happy. If we can, at the end of the day, have our client happy and make sure that our client gets their full bonus points, that is a definition of success. And in terms of the deeper, in terms of our host, I think we've gone through that already.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. And Yvette, I don't know if Yvette and Thulani, or even you do, you can all touch on this. There are lots of companies that are online today that are attending the masterclass. And let's say company A is interested in working with Cigna in running their learnership program. How do they reach out to you, and what is the process?
Can I take that?
Yes.
Please, if they're wanting to engage with us, please let them contact me on yvette@cigna.co.za, or even at info@cigna.co.za, or on any of our social media platforms. Engage with me. I'm happy to set up time and we'll sit together, work on a solution for that organization, work on their training requirements, and come up with a plan.
Sweet. Thank you. And now I just wanted to ask like the open floor questions that are there, and then I know some of them you will refer them to the side. The first is an anonymous attendee. They ask, do you have any strategies to help mentors get more involved in their role as a mentor to the learner?
I'll take that. If I may, then maybe Tuelo, I don't know if you want to add. You know, I like that question, because mentors, normally in the learnership space, what we've been referring to in the buddy system is the skills coach, is the experienced worker who's the taskmaster, who is going to hold this person's hand going forward in transfer skills. Is normally described as a mentor, workplace mentor. So if I'm understanding that to be the case in the question, we love that question. I particularly do, because it means that they're invested in this. They want to be equipped to handle the learner properly. So what do we do as Cigna? We like to make sure that host representative. So, and we talk about the host quite a lot. So a host, remember there's a sponsor who is our paying client. He is the host if he brings the learner into his environment. Or in some stages, as Tuelo has said, sometimes our clients have headcount moratoriums, but they really, really want to make a contribution to the youth, and they really, really want to make an investment. So while they have the budget, they just have restrictions in headcount. So what we do is, knowing their challenge or their need, we work with other, and this is the lovely bit because everybody wins. We work with other companies who don't have budget, who are willing to host and give the learner workplace experience, but they don't know how. So I like this question because the mentor says, okay, tell me how. So we like to involve them right through when we do the selection of the learner for that match of their environment, so that if they can, if they've got time, come in after that, we know what their requirements are for what kind of person will be suitable for the environment. We say, but come be the person, participate in the recruitment and selection process, because what then works is that this person has handpicked the person and is interested in this person. And so what we do is in the orientation and onboarding process, then role clarification, obligations of this one and obligations of that one. These are mutual obligations. All of that thing gets clarified. So Yvette talked about, the body then talking to the fact that, it's the body who will make the person comfortable, the learner comfortable in the environment, show them how to navigate the environment, show them what the etiquette is around the environment, all the soft skills approaches that they need in that environment. Then that conversation happens with that mentor or buddy or the skills coach. So that is important for the success of the learnership. So I like the fact that mentors are asking for training. We normally want to invite the buddy into the recruitment and onboarding process where the induction is done, because then we say, you remember that rotation that I talked about? Your role is this: make sure the person knows the lay of the land, and then understand the value chain, gets to know who's who that your department works with. And then, because otherwise they're working out of context, they'll get things wrong. How do you communicate in the organization, and what protocols are there in the organization, or what are the rules of the organization? Because you don't want all of a sudden to have misconduct cases because the person, has not been oriented. So it is important for the mentors or the skills coach to know exactly what his part is. And that's the co-creation, the co-planning in terms of the structuring that we were talking about. Thank you for that question.
No, thank you very much. And then the next question that came through, there's a couple here. I'll read one from Vincent and then Brian, and then I will ask the Charlene and then the other questions. Vincent wanted to know, does service providers absorb learners to build in their career path, or only absorb learners based on their client spending to gain their BE point? And then Brian asked, how do businesses participate in learnership and how do they benefit? If Yvette can have one, and maybe Tuelo have one, and then you can also, Tulan, you can also play a role in answering those questions.
Yes, so maybe with the first one, who's taking that? Okay.
About service providers.
Yes, about service providers. Maybe if I can jump in there, and then whether maybe you can also come in. I think let's just clarify something with the service providers. Like Cigna Academy is a training service provider. We're facilitating the whole learner journey. So with the end in mind, we want to make sure that the absorption happens. But the ideal scenario is that the sponsor, the client, should be working around his needs, talent needs. And like I said, where he has no, he's got headcount restrictions, then he may say, Cigna, help me out. And we love doing that, because then we know that, it's not going to be a forced situation where he goes into that environment and it's not comfortable. So we then identify an SMME, small, medium enterprise, micro enterprise, that normally has this other challenge, which is they don't have budget. They want resources, but they don't have budget because they're starting up, or it's just difficult for them in terms of budget. So we then facilitate a conversation, we keep them, and we have, as Tuelo has said, looked at what their needs are, so that, after 12 months or, any time in the journey towards the end of that learnership, they may actually find that they are wanting to keep this resource and their fortunes have changed, and now they do have a little bit of budget, and therefore they've looked at the return on investment on their side, investing time on this person and not wanting to lose the skill they would then absorb. And this is what we encourage. We already have that conversation up front when we start engaging them in the recruitment process and preparing them to take this learner on board. So we don't particularly ourselves want to take that away from them. So as a training service provider, we are not putting ourselves as the people who absorb, because our job is to train. And we need to put the learner in the right environment according to his qualification, where that qualification makes sense for that host. So yes, 1 or 2 times we found that, things happen. Your SMME somehow had good intentions, but it didn't work out. We will never, we'll do a host transfer. And if that doesn't happen, we look at what's missing in their work experience. Is there a department in Cigna that where they can fit in, where they can get the right notional hours, the real experience that associated with the learning they've just had, for them to exiting being the fact that they actually complete the theory phase and the practical phase, and then the seaters are happy to give them a certificate. So yes, so I'm hoping that I answered that. So and you mentioned something about B points. Many companies want a double whammy, and as we said, we want to deliver a triple whammy. So companies do maybe at some stage do look at this and say, what are the things that we have to accomplish? One of those things is to get a good level, BE level, and therefore, where are we? And by the way, we've got at Cigna, the advisory business that looks at their scorecards and advises them where they need to put in more effort in order to maximize their scorecard. But they will definitely, part of their reasoning will be a need to achieve BE points. But working with Cigna, we put the power of one up front, which means get the one of the objectives being the fact that this person gets into an environment where he can contribute so that absorption can happen. So when we are involved, it's a double whammy, and we say when we do it right, then the points follow. It shouldn't be just about the points, but I do understand that there may be entities out there where they've got their talent strategies right, and BE scorecard is an annual thing. So then every year you have to start again. And maybe in that scenario, when they've already got another program, they may say, okay, help me run a learnership. And at this stage, then make the learners become useful in another person's environment, which is like enterprise development for that SMME, who then hosts, and they get their points, and the host entity gets a resource. And if the absorption happens, then the learner gets a job.
Sweet. Thank you very much. And then Yvette, if you can touch on how do businesses participate in learnership and how do they benefit? So I believe this person is probably wanting to get in touch with you. It's Brian in Global.
I see. So that is, they got an accreditation for qualification and recruited learners, and how do they benefit and get their points? That question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The best answer to that would be really to get in contact with us. We have advisors that can actually delve into all the detail and really have the conversation around their transformation journey, give them the best possible advice. There's obviously a lot of detail involved. So the best is to get in contact, and we can set up a conversation.
Oh, fantastic. Because I believe even the next question is from an anonymous. She says, I'm in construction. I'm a young woman. How do I do for my company to have a learnership program for young women to join in construction? Cigna email has been put in the comments and the chat, if you can look for that there. And then Shalin Marimutu asks, in terms of learnerships and graduate program, what is the difference with ROI? Also from a rebate side, do you get it for graduate programs or only for learnerships?
Yeah, so in the transformation landscape, and going back to the BE Code's criteria, both count. It's just how you structure it, whether it then achieves, there's lots of, in the learning program matrix and the BE skills development scorecard, there's what's called the learning program matrix, category A, B, C, D, E, F, and G types of programs. They're all classified according to how they're delivered, where they're delivered, and what the achievement would be, whether it's a qualification, diploma, certificate, it's informal or formal. So a graduate program, it's almost, if you look at graduate programs and internships, are sort of similar in their intent. So by the graduate program, someone's already qualified and got their certificates. Internship normally would be something that you need to go through the work experience in order to graduate, and then that is structured. So for me, with the graduate program versus a learnership, the issue there is that the ROI should be the same. Like I said in the beginning, I think that is why we're excited about motivating that learnership should be treated like graduate programs, because the only difference is that one has completed it, a graduate completed their tertiary and they've got their certificates, whereas the learner in a learnership is still acquiring, is doing both, is in the process of acquiring a certificate and requires the notional hours, the practical learning hours, in order to then exit, to get their qualification. So they're doing two things, getting an academic education and getting work experience all at the same time. The investment is that graduate program, you're not spending money on the education, but in a learnership, the sponsor, the client, is paying for the theory, and the whole program is paid for, which includes the fact that this person must have practical learning, which is what we talk about, what host departments, host employers provide. And the ROI is that then that total investment in time and money, it should be similar in the investment in time aspect as a graduate program, because it's about skills coaching, it's about making sure the person fits in, that rotation we talked about, and making sure that at the end of the day, the person is absorbable, is being equipped to deliver in the team.
Oh, sweet. Thank you very much. And in closing, I just wanted to ask the last two questions. Mina, she asked this question. She said, like to learn, I believe that the learnerships or work-based learning programs in general are the most important way to connect with young people, to connect young people to the world of work more efficiently and at a large scale. The question is, how do you generate many job opportunities in rural areas and township, which most young people are situated? She says it is clear from where she's sitting that South African cities can't cope, with the influx of young people. And then she's like, how do you expand or help the small farms, bakeries, small production workshop that specializes in like wood machining, furniture polishing, and so forth, like to turn them into valid centers of workplace experience close to the learner's home, so that they don't feel like, they're missing out compared to, to learners in the city. And then the last question, it's from an anonymous company. I believe they might need to get in touch with you. They say, we are set up and have an ICT youth learnership program. Would like to propose, which includes accreditation and on-the-job experience with another partner, also a startup. They're proposing that. However, they say they can't afford to pay the stipends, no courses fees for accreditation partner. They say there's ROI, but the funding and budget is unavailable for them. Like, what can they do to go further, or they're looking for guidance in those regards? Like, if we can start with Mina's question, and then we can also answer anonymous.
Okay, with Mina's question, thanks for that question, Mina. It's a challenge that we muse over and we deliberate over at Cigna. Remember, we've spoken about the power of one in the national crisis with unemployment, and basically the drive with the BE or transformative legislation is to address that. And our Power of One is aligned to that. And what we're saying is one person at a time, you can make a difference. And so what we have found with the challenge that we're trying to address and bringing solutions is, everybody talks about the township economy. And, we've even thought about, what about the rural economy? So that is the where you are in your question, to say, stop this migration, into cities, and what's happening with people's plight in those circumstances. And what's happening is that we're neglecting the fact that we should be building economies from where they are. So what we have done at Cigna is that we've built a flexible delivery model. And that flexible delivery model is that when we assess, if the client says, I want this program to run in this environment, in this geography, we say to them, cool, let's understand and we plan together to say, these are the pros and cons, how do we mitigate? And we do, excuse the pun, pop-up campuses. And we take the learnerships there. Obviously, there's a little bit of a different cost structuring because now you're investing in getting resources there and et cetera, but it's doable. And then what happens is that, and as I said, your ideal host is the SMME, because they need the extra resources and often have budgetary constraints. So it becomes a win-win for the bakery. I think you talked about bakeries, farmers, etc. And interesting enough, we deal a lot with farming communities, the agri sector. We've run learnerships for big clients who have interest and want to develop in the rural space. So we've had a bit of experience with that. So it's things that I think with conversations we can, look at the situation and say how, the ideal environment would be X, Y, Z. Now that we know what that environment takes, how do we make it work? So that solution becomes created around that need. So we're very happy to contribute in that manner. And in actual fact, we see this big challenge as an exciting challenge for us. And we're all the time trying to think, how do we do it better? So at Cigna, true to its spirit of innovation, we've also got a sister company, a bunch of engineers called Riot, Radio Internet of Things. We're trying to get connectivity in rural spaces, in townships, so that learning can happen, so that economic activation can happen. So this is being in test mode and it's working very well. Where it's been tested, in fact, the people who are using our technology, where there's the sub-base stations, which encourage connectivity, where normally connectivity is very poor or absent, it's been working and they're asking for more. It's just that we're perfecting the product, and then it will equip us to be more impactful in the townships, the underserved townships, and the underserved rural spaces. So I hope that helps.
That definitely does help. I just wanted to thank you ladies for joining me today. Yvette, Tuelo, and Tulani, you've been fantastic. I know there are many people that have questions for you. Please do make sure you do contact Cigna. And like we mentioned, there's so much unemployment. It's a crisis, especially with the pandemic. Our youth, we do not know where to go. And business sector, you also have, you want to run the programs, but you do not know where to go. Cigna is here for you. They've got the academy just to assist you in those regards. And from Topco Media, we're here to inspire the world to do good business. And we, as we have partnered with Cigna today, we invite the world, businesses in South Africa to play their role in contacting you guys today. As Sitlogolo Mutiba, I just want to say thank you very much. Until next time, we say adios.
Thank you, Tabiso. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, bye.